Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Zoe, and today I'm just going to be going over all of the things that I did to get into law school. So this is going to be things that are normally considered softs, extracurriculars, clubs, organizations, things like that, whereas your hard skills are like your numbers, so your test scores, your GPA. And to show you guys what I did in undergrad, I'm pretty much just going to be going through my law school resume and looking at everything that I told schools that I did in undergrad. And that is actually a very important detail because everything you do in undergrad usually doesn't make it to your resume, usually doesn't make it to what you actually tell law schools that you did. So being very intentional about the activities that you list, like on your resume and things like that, is very important. So yeah, I'm looking at my law school resume right now, and when I say law school, I mean law school. Like, this resume is not just any old resume that you use for any job application or anything like that. The resume that you send to law schools needs to be very specific to law school, meaning it should use language that law schools would want to see, things like you analyzed or you researched or you collaborated, things like that. Law schools don't really need to know that you worked a part-time job at Sonic like I did, unless that took up a significant amount of your time during school, in which case it might be able to explain like lower grades or things like that. But since that wasn't the case for me, I'll just go ahead and say I did not put like my part-time jobs on my resume. So like, I worked at Taco Bell, I worked at Sonic, I worked at like some other place, all while I was in undergrad, but none of those things made it to my resume just because I had other more important job qualifications that I wanted to highlight. And I knew that, you know, those other things wouldn't really make a difference to law school admissions counselors because they didn't really affect like my grades or anything. So yeah. Okay, so we're just gonna start from the top. At the beginning of my resume, of course, I have my school, Vanderbilt University. Obviously that's important because, you know, you have to go to undergrad to go to law school, but also if your school has a certain reputation, you might get like some leeway based on your grades. So if you go to a school that's known for grade deflation, so they're known to like give students lower grades on average, then you might be able to explain like a lower GPA. So that of course would work in your benefit. But regardless of where you go to school, of course you have to have your GPA on your resume. So that's what I have there. And then my majors. So in undergrad, I majored in medicine, health, and society, and I also majored in Spanish, neither of which is related to law in any sort of way. Well, that's the kicker. You have to relate your experiences to law some way or another, because a lot of people don't major in anything law related. So like not politics, not government, history, things like that. Of course, you can major in those things, but law school has no prerequisites at all. So you really want to take undergrad as a time to explore things that you are actually interested in, because really you'll learn everything you need to learn about the law in law school. And that brings me to my next point. I was not very active in like law related activities in undergrad. So when I was making my resume, I wanted to tell a story through the activities and the organizations that I was a part of, so that it made sense that I was applying to law school. Truth be told, a lot of people apply to law school on a whim just because they know that there are no prerequisites. So even if you do fall into that category, you have to construct your resume in a way that it looks like you have been thinking about law your whole undergraduate career, and everything you've done up to this point has led you to law school. So for example, like I said earlier, I majored in medicine, health, and society, which looks at a lot of like health inequities, healthcare in America, and things like that. So my whole story for law school is that I'm passionate about like health law and health and justice, and I want to be a health advocate at the end of the day. So that is a story that I tell through my resume. If we look at my experience section, you can see that 2 out of the 3 jobs that I reported having during school had to do with like some sort of health related thing. So one of them was I worked as a health outreach worker with students after school. And the other one was that I worked at a healthcare or health insurance company. So both of those have to do with health, and both of those helped frame my mindset for why I'm passionate about health law, which I was able to talk about in my personal statement. And then I also have a job that I worked for 2 years during undergrad, just because that was a job that I had during the school year, and so It's helpful for law admissions officers and counselors to know, if you are spending significant amount of time doing something other than school, because like I said earlier, that can explain like different variations in grades. And then on my resume, I have my research section. Research is something that not everyone does in undergrad, but if you do it, it's a very good way to stand out. So I did research through my honors major department. So basically I applied to be an honors student in my department, and well, number one, like that obviously is going to look good to law school. If you are like an honors student or can some other way, just like make yourself stand out from the rest of the people at your school, that is definitely something that you should look into doing regardless of like what your major is. If you can do it and be honors or be like, above your peers in some way, that is what law schools are going to be looking for. And then a lot of law school and a lot of being a lawyer is research and writing. So anything that is like research heavy, writing heavy is going to look very good on a law school resume. So of course I have my research here. I didn't like do any journalism type things in undergrad, but if you do something like that, that would also be a very good thing to put on your law school resume. So the next section I have on my resume is my leadership and professional development. And this is pretty much like my clubs, organizations, activities, and things like that. So first I have my sorority, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Something you also might have noticed on my resume is that I include like how many hours per week I spent doing each activity. And that is also helpful just because it frames your whole college experience for the admissions office. So like I've been saying, it's just helpful for them to know like how much time you're spending doing certain activities. And then next under that I have the spirit team. So yeah, I was a cheerleader for my first 3 years of college before the pandemic hit, and this was a very big thing for me. And it's also why like I honestly don't have a lot of like extracurriculars on my resume, because I didn't do a lot. Because I was spending a lot of my time doing one thing, and that was being a cheerleader. And admissions offices know that like athletics takes up a lot of time for students. So the fact that I was a student athlete, I'm sure, worked in my favor when I was applying to law schools. Of course, that's not something that you can just pick up. So don't be stressed if like you're like, oh my gosh, she's a cheerleader. No wonder she got into such great schools, blase, blase, whatever. No, like you just have to find things to replace that with. And truth be told, like I didn't have leadership positions in clubs because I was doing things for cheer like all the time. So it honestly balances out with people who can be really involved in a club or two, like become president or vice president, do things with that club versus like me who is at practice 3-4 days a week and games 1 day a week. So yeah. And then next I have some financial services institute, because as a sophomore and freshman I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I wasn't like completely sold on going to law school at that point, so I did a lot of career exploration. I was selected as a mentee basically for some pretty competitive programs across the country. And I included that on my resume because I think it showed admissions officers that like I have had pretty diverse experiences, but also like I really emphasized the fact that like I was chosen out of a very large group of applicants. So it makes me look well-rounded, for lack of a better word. So if you do have like experiences that maybe would make an admissions officer think that, oh, you're not sure about law school, you're just applying because you don't know what else you can do, I would just say to frame it as you're well-rounded and you can do many things, not like you're just like scatterbrained and don't know what you're doing. There's definitely a way to frame every story. You just have to figure out how to frame yours. And then the last thing on my resume is just like random things that don't really fit anywhere else, or that I didn't spend a whole lot of time doing, but I was involved in undergrad. So first I have languages. Of course I majored in Spanish, so it's probably not surprising that like I'm conversationally and how do you say that? Writtenly fluent? I don't know, whatever. You know what I'm trying to say. I'm probably gonna think that later and be like, oh my gosh, that's embarrassing. Anyway, and then I have my activism on there. So I volunteered in several like campaigns, and that's just to show that like I am politically active. I have been interested in politics for a while, which hopefully also points to why I'm going to law school and, you know, makes it seem less random. I also have my abroad experience. So going abroad was another big thing for me in undergrad. Probably cheering and being abroad were like my two most unique things if we're just looking at my resume. So I spent a month in Peru after my sophomore year. I spent a week in Honduras during my sophomore year. And then my junior year, I spent a semester in Italy before we got kicked out because of COVID. Yeah, being able to say that I have like a global perspective on lots of issues, that I'm able to immerse myself in different cultures is of course useful. And I think that is something that law schools find valuable. You'll see a lot of law schools report that XYZ% of students studied abroad in undergrad. So they like boasting those numbers. So if you are interested in going abroad, I would definitely recommend it, even if it's not for a whole semester. A lot of schools do Maymesters now, so you can go right after spring just for a month and get that experience still. Then I have some random skills on there. Honestly, I don't even know what to say about that. Yeah, literally random skills. And then campus involvement, Black Student Association, NAACP, Vanderbilt Fashion Exchange. So yeah, those are just other clubs that I'm maybe not like as involved in. So like I don't hold a position, I may not go weekly, but I am involved in those. So yeah, those just get like an honorable mention at the end of my resume. Something else that I want to mention, if I scroll back to the top of my resume, I have a place for my scholarships and awards. So like I said earlier, law school has no prereqs. You are not expected to do anything in undergrad, but whatever you do, you want to be very good at. You want to perform as highly as possible in whatever classes you take, in whatever activities you pursue, whatever. So one way to really show that you're doing that is by getting awards or scholarships for certain things. And a lot of colleges, they will have award ceremonies at the end of each academic year, and you literally just have to nominate yourself for the award. And most people don't care because they're like, it doesn't mean anything. But if you do get an award, like that's something that's very impressive to put on your resume that law schools would like to see. So if your school does do something like that, or if organizations at your school do something like that, I would definitely recommend nominating yourself for awards every year. So yeah, the last thing I want to say is just to make sure that your resume, your college experience, it looks cohesive and it makes sense that you're applying to law school based on what you've done. Like, it doesn't matter if you have never taken a political science class in your entire college career, if you have never had a law-related internship or things like that. I didn't do any law-related internships or anything like that. And I'm also like going straight to law school. I didn't take a break. I didn't have a job after undergrad, and obviously like I was fine with my experience. So yeah, just tell your story in a way that is captivating, in a way that makes sense, and in a way that shows an admissions committee why you want to be a lawyer and that you've had enough experiences to make you sure that you should be a lawyer. So yeah, that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in a few days for my next video, and check out the rest of my law school series while you're here. Bye!